Donald Trump has gained major support among a critical component of Iowa's Republican base, evangelical voters. That could be a key driver in tonight's outcome, and their votes could be an early sign of what's to come. Let's go back to CNN's John Berman. Tonight's going to test, John, whether any other Republican can break Trump's hold on evangelical voters. Where do the candidates stand right now when it comes to evangelical support?
Well, they are all fighting for it, Anderson. There's no question about that. And when we talk about evangelicals in Iowa, they make up just 12.4% of the vote, which doesn't seem like that much. But in Republican caucuses, they play an outsized role. There's just no question about it. In 2016, they made up roughly 65% of Republican caucus goers. In Ted Cruz, seen as the candidate of evangelicals, he won. In 2012, they made up 57% of the Republican caucus goers, and Rick Santorum, seen as the candidate of evangelical voters, he won. And if you go back to 2008, a very similar story. They made up 60% of Republican caucus goers, and Mike Huckabee was the winner. He was seen as the candidate of evangelical voters. I want to go back to 2016 because that tells more of the story about where we are right now. As we said, Ted Cruz, he won the caucuses back in 2016. If we look at where the evangelical voters are in this state, again, in the far northwest corner, the darker the color here, the more densely populated among evangelical voters. You can see these areas or where the evangelical voters are. And if I switch to the counties that Ted Cruz won, yellow is Ted Cruz. You can see he did very well in all of these counties. This was Cruz County. Tonight, Donald Trump wants to do well in all these counties and the same counties he did well in 2016 himself. In a way, he wants to double where he was, and there are signs that he's on the way of doing that because in the latest Des Moines Register poll, support among evangelicals, I drew an extra line there, but you can see Donald Trump is at 51% among support among evangelicals. Ron DeSantis running second at 22%. But this is a group that both of them very much want to control tonight, Anderson.
John Berman. John, thanks. Caitlin?
Speaking of Governor DeSantis, he has poured a lot of time and money into Iowa, but a big question that we'll be looking at tonight is whether or not he can shake the former president's hold on evangelical voters there. One of the state's most influential evangelical leaders joins me now. Bob Vander Plaats is the CEO of the Family Leader. He endorsed Governor DeSantis back in December. Great to have you here. Thanks for joining us on such an exciting day in Iowa. Do you still believe that Governor DeSantis can win Iowa?
I really do, Caitlin. Matter of fact, it's almost like a perfect storm for him, no pun intended. It's frigid wind chills out there tonight. There's snow, there's ice. I think it's going to be a turnout game. He's built an amazing organization. Ted Cruz was the best organization I've ever seen in 2016. And I'd say DeSantis' organization is light years ahead of where Cruz's organization is. So if he gets the turnout, I think he could he'll beat expectations, but potentially he could win.
So you think the weather will actually, in turn, help Governor DeSantis and hurt someone like Donald Trump, who right now is the front runner in this race?
Well, there's two things. That remains to be seen. There's two things that are going to play into a turnout game. One's going to be organization, which is advantage clearly DeSantis. The other one will be enthusiasm. And what I've been seeing on the ground as I've traveled with the governor from campaign stop to campaign stop, there's no doubt he has the energy and the enthusiasm. Matter of fact, it matches a lot of what I saw with Huckabee, Santorum, and Cruz in the late days of their caucus victories.
Well, I wonder where you think evangelical voters are going into this, because the candidates that you just listed, those were ones who primarily won those voters over. But when you look at a Des Moines Register poll, the one that just came out over the weekend, it shows that Trump is leading among evangelical voters with 51% support compared to 22% support for Governor DeSantis, 12% for Nikki Haley. I mean, why do you think evangelicals, based on these numbers, are lining up behind Donald Trump?
Well, I think one is because Donald Trump now has a record. He had a record of accomplishment. He appointed 3 Supreme Court justices. He moved the embassy to Jerusalem. He did the Abraham Accords. He stood up for religious liberty. There's a lot of things that evangelicals would say, we're very appreciative of that. But Caitlin, where my pulse doesn't line up with the polls, that means every other person I visit with in my base would have to tell me they're voting for Donald Trump. And that's just not the case. They tell me they're appreciative, but in the next breath they tell me it's time to turn the page, get to the next generation of leader that can lead on day one and for 2 terms. And then they talk about Governor Ron DeSantis. That's why I believe DeSantis could defy the polls tonight and not only come in a very strong second, but he might actually knock on the door of winning this thing.
You just cited Trump's record, but I wonder where you think Trump himself lies on these issues, because Governor DeSantis told me he doesn't think Trump is pro-life.
Well, there's no doubt that the Trump of 2016 and the Trump of 24, we say he's just really not the same guy. He got the life question at a town hall with you, and he said he's willing to make a deal on it. He had the same question at a Fox News town hall just recently, and he said that's why we're getting beat was because of the life issue, and we need to win. That he said about Governor DeSantis and about Governor Reynolds, that by signing the heartbeat bill, that was an awful, awful thing. For us pro-lifers, that says now he's now pro-choice, not pro-life. On the gender issue, when Megyn Kelly asked him, can a man become a woman? He couldn't answer that question. Those are issues that we have concerns with today. So I can see why evangelicals are appreciative of what he did in his term as president, but now they really need to look clear-eyed as they go forward about who can win at 24 and then who can lead on our issues.
Yeah, that moment you brought up, there are two town halls. The town hall with me, Trump would not say how many weeks he would support on an abortion bill. In the other town hall with Fox last week, when he was asked, he basically made it sound like, or he acknowledged the fact that the abortion policies that Republicans have pursued are hurting them at the polls, and was saying you have to win votes. Do you think it's clear that Donald Trump is just politics driven on this, not policy or principle?
Well, I think it's definitely where he's at, because if you also recall in the midterm elections of 22, he threw the pro-life community under the bus and blamed us for not having the red wave or the red tsunami that we were supposed to have. But I'd remind everybody, those who were authentically pro-life, a Governor Ron DeSantis, a Governor Kim Reynolds, not only did they win in 2022, but they experienced the red wave in Florida and in Iowa that was predicted all across the country. I think on the pro-life issue, on the life issue, people want to have authenticity. They don't want to have nuance. They don't want to have let's make a deal. They want to know where are you at on that issue. And I believe Governor DeSantis has been exceptionally clear. He wants to be a champion for the culture of the sanctity of human life.
If Donald Trump wins the Iowa caucuses tonight, could you support him despite everything that you just laid out of what he said about your community?
Well, I think whoever wins the nomination, and whether that be Governor DeSantis or the former President Donald Trump, they need to earn everybody's votes, especially those people that were not with them in the primary process. So I would say right now, Caitlin, let's stay focused on the Iowa caucuses. Let's stay focused on the primary that's ahead of us. And then once we get to that point, we got to make sure that those candidates are willing to earn the votes and supports of the other camps. That will make them a better candidate going forward.
Bob Vander Plaats, as always, perfect to hear from you, but great to hear from you on a day like today. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Caitlin. God bless.
And up next, a plea from Donald Trump to even his supporters who may not be well to come out to tonight's caucuses. Ahead, much more on the race for the nomination and the freezing weather that is bad enough to make even the toughest Iowan rethink going out.